Mary Alice, I'm going to cut you off for just a second, please. We're going right now to a network special report.
This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good afternoon, and we come on the air at this hour because of breaking news from Trump Tower here in New York City. We have been monitoring comments made by President Trump just a short time ago. Those comments come in the wake of what we witnessed in Charlottesville over the weekend. He was speaking to reporters ostensibly about infrastructure and his hopes for an infrastructure plan for America moving forward. But almost immediately, the questions began to turn to his reaction to Charlottesville, the fact that it took 48 hours before he actually singled out groups involved in what we witnessed in Charlottesville. And we want to play for you part of the president. Our team is standing by. Here's what the president said just moments ago.
If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Why do you think these CEOs are leaving your manufacturing council?
Because they're not taking their job seriously as it pertains to this country. We want jobs, manufacturing in this country. If you look at some of those people that you're talking about, they're outside of the country. They're having a lot of their product made outside. If you look at Merck as an example, take a look where, take a look at where their product is made. It's made outside of our country. We want products made in the country. Now, I have to tell you, some of the folks that will leave, they're leaving out of embarrassment because they make their products outside. And I've been lecturing them, including the gentleman that you're referring to, about you have to bring it back to this country. You can't do it necessarily in Ireland and all of these other places. You have to bring this work back to this country. That's what I want. I want manufacturing to be back into the United States so that American workers can benefit.
Let me ask you, Mr. President, why did you wait so long last year?
I didn't wait long. I didn't wait long. I didn't wait long. I wanted to make sure, unlike most politicians, that what I said was correct, not make a quick statement. The statement I made on Saturday, the first statement, was a fine statement. But you don't make statements that direct unless you know the fact. It takes a little while to get the facts. You still don't know the facts. And it's a very, very important process to me. And it's a very important statement. So I don't want to go quickly and just make a statement for the sake of making a political statement. I want to know the facts. If you go back to my, in fact, I brought it.
Who did you bring, Mr. President?
As I said on, remember this, Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. And then I went on from there. Now, here's the thing. As to, excuse me, take it nice and easy. Here's the thing. When I make a statement, I like to be correct. I want the facts. This event just happened. In fact, a lot of the event didn't even happen yet as we were speaking. This event just happened. Before I make a statement, I need the facts. So I don't want to rush into a statement. So making the statement when I made it was excellent. In fact, the young woman, who I hear is a fantastic young woman, and it was on NBC, her mother wrote me and said through, I guess, Twitter, social media, the nicest things, and I very much appreciated that. I hear she was a fine, really actually an incredible young woman. But her mother on Twitter thanked me for what I said. And honestly, if the press were not fake, and if it was honest, the press would have said what I said was very nice. But unlike you and unlike the media, before I make a statement, I like to know the facts. They don't.
Here's Andrew Anglin.
How about a couple of infrastructure
that
questions?
event? Was that terrorism?
Say it. What?
The CEO of Walmart said you missed a critical opportunity to help bring the country together. Did you?
Not at all. I think the country. Look, you take a look. I've created over 1 million jobs since I'm president. The country is booming. The stock market is setting records. We have the highest employment numbers we've ever had in the history of our country. We're doing record business. We have the highest levels of enthusiasm. So the head of Walmart, who I know, who's a very nice guy, was making a political statement. I mean, ask him how he's doing. I do it the same way. And you know why? Because I want to make sure, when I make a statement, that the statement is correct. And there was no way There was no way of making a correct statement that early. I had to see the facts, unlike a lot of reporters.
Nazis were there.
I didn't know David Duke was there. I wanted to see the facts. And the facts, as they started coming out, were very well stated. In fact, everybody said his statement was beautiful. If he would have made it sooner, that would have been good. I couldn't have made it sooner because I didn't know all of the facts. Frankly, people still don't know all of the facts. It was very important. Excuse me. It was very important to me to get the facts out and correctly, because if I would have made a fast statement, and the first statement was made without knowing much other than what we were seeing. The second statement was made after, with knowledge, with great knowledge. There's still things, there's still things that people don't know. I want to make a statement with knowledge. I wanted to know the facts. Okay.
Two questions. Was this terrorism? And can you tell us how you're feeling about your chief strategist?
Well, I think the driver of the car is a disgrace to himself, his family, and this country. And that is, you can call it terrorism. You can call it murder. You can call it whatever you want. I would just call it as the fastest one to come up with a good verdict. That's what I'd call it. Because there is a question. Is it murder? Is it terrorism? And then you get into legal semantics. The driver of the car is a murderer. And what he did was a horrible, horrible, inexcusable thing.
Can you tell us how you're feeling about your chief strategist, Mr. Bannon? Can you talk about that?
I would echo Maggie's question. Steve Bannon is.
I never spoke to Mr. Bannon about it.
Can you tell us broadly what your? Do you still have confidence in Steve?
Well, we'll see. Hey, look. I like Mr. Bannon. He's a friend of mine. But Mr. Bannon came on very late. You know that. I went through 17 senators, governors, and I won all the primaries. Mr. Bannon came on very much later than that. And I like him. He's a good man. He is not a racist, I can tell you that. He's a good person. He actually gets a very unfair press in that regard. But we'll see what happens with Mr. Bannon. But he's a good person, and I think the press treats him, frankly, very unfairly.
Do you have confidence that Senator McCain has called on you to defend your National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, against
I've
some of
already
these
done it.
attacks?
I did it the last time.
And he called on it again, linking the
Senator
tweet
McCain?
to the alt-right and
Senator
saying
McCain, you mean the one who voted against Obamacare?
And he said
Who
that
is Senator? You mean Senator McCain who voted against us getting good health care?
McCain said that the alt-right is behind these attacks, and he linked that same group to those who perpetrated the attack in Charlottesville.
Well, I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm sure Senator McCain must know what he's talking about. But when you say the alt-right, define alt-right to me. You define it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying,
define it for me. Come on, let's go. Define
Senator
it.
McCain defined them as the same group.
Okay, what about the alt-left that came charging at him? Excuse me. What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt?
This is Senator McCain's statement.
Let me ask you this. What about the fact that they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. So, as far as I'm concerned, that was a horrible, horrible day. Wait a minute. I'm not finished. I'm not finished, fake news. That was a horrible day. I will tell you something. I watched those very closely, much more closely than you people watched it. And you have you had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now. You had a group on the other side that came charging in without a permit, and they were very, very violent. Go ahead.
Do you think that what you call the alt-left is the same as neo-Nazis?
Those people, all of those people, excuse me, I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. Those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee. So, excuse me, and you take a look at some of the groups and you see, and you know it if you were honest reporters, which in many cases you're not, but many of those people were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. So, This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week? And is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop? But they were there to protest. Excuse me. You take a look the night before. They were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. Infrastructure question. Go ahead.
Very contentious moments there at Trump Tower. President Trump taking questions on his reaction to the events that America witnessed in Charlottesville, Virginia over the weekend. The president saying, I did not wait too long, that he wanted the facts before he made that statement, that second statement to America. Obviously, there was the initial statement and heavy criticism that followed because he did not, in his initial response, point to the specific groups that were involved in some of the horrific scenes we saw in Charlottesville. He went on to talk about reaction to the CEO of Walmart, who said, you missed an opportunity to bring the country together. He said, I did not miss that opportunity. You're looking at pictures. This obviously was the evening before what really unfolded there on Saturday in Charlottesville. And he said that some of those people, you have a lot of people who were innocently protesting. When we see those pictures there the night before, they had a permit. He went on to say to reporters in questions that followed what you just saw there. He also asked, what about the alt-left? What can be said about them? Did they not come charging into the scene as well? Do they own some of the responsibility, in so many words, and I'm paraphrasing there, but then asked about the other folks who came and responded to these protests in Charlottesville. Do they deserve any of the blame? That was the questioning that he began to ask as reporters were standing there asking him about his response and whether or not he missed an opportunity to try to unite America. I do want to bring in Mary Bruce because, Mary, you were right there at Trump Tower. You're now outside. A very contentious scene, as I mentioned, but the president standing firm behind his statement, saying he needed the time, the facts, he said, to put that statement together, although you have reported and our White House team has reported that the First Lady responded, Ivanka Trump responded over the weekend, the Vice President Mike Pence responded, and then the president responded, saying he needed the facts. So obviously there's a question that remains about why so many others were able to respond. But talk to us about what you witnessed there in the lobby and the fact that the president is standing firm.
David, this was quite a scene. The president was defiant and doubling down. Consider the timeline here. We are now 3 days out from that scene in Charlottesville, that hate-fueled violence, and the president now seems to be back at square one, despite the tremendous backlash from his initial statements after this violence. The president now is once again condemning both sides here, saying that there is blame on both sides. And as you mentioned, he coined this new term, it seems, the alt-left, asking what responsibility do they bear? Now, we asked the president, I asked him just to be clear, was he drawing any sort of moral equivalency between what he describes as the alt-left, that side of the protest, and the white supremacists? And the president said no, but that he did then go on to point out that he feels that there were bad people on both sides of this fight. Now, you mentioned the fallout that we have seen since these protests, and it's worth mentioning again that we've seen this rush of CEOs, now 4 CEOs coming out announcing that they are stepping down from their role on the President's Manufacturing Council in protest to the way the president has handled his response to these protests. And now we're hearing reaction from Capitol Hill coming into what the president just said. One Republican member of the House summing it up in just 2 words, tweeting, David, just no.
And Mary, I was struck in watching the news conference. You were the one who did ask about this equivalency question, this moral equivalency between the alt-right and the alt-left, as he seemed to coin during this press conference. He then said, as you said, and pointed back to you, Mary, about you calling it the alt-left. So we should just, for the record, point out that the president actually used that terminology. First, you were simply asking for a clarification. The president then did answer along the way, as you alluded to, Mary, that I think there is blame on both sides here, and went on to say about the initial protest in Charlottesville, some of the images of the tiki torches that we saw, and talking about the people we saw in some of those images. He said a lot of people were there to innocently protest. They had a permit. he said he should add. I do want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, who led much of our coverage over the weekend as these events were taking place. And Cecilia, it is very clear that this president, even with time, is standing firm. He's defending his timeline and defending his words, quite frankly.
Standing his ground, David, and not backing down. And I think the headlines that will come out of this, those that are emerging already, is really this split shared blame that the president is placing on the protesters on both sides that we saw there in Charlottesville. He said there is blame on both sides, and he criticized equally both the protesters, the counter-protesters, the alt-left, as he's calling them now, as Mary just said, and the neo-Nazis. And disturbingly, David, some of the reaction that is coming in to the president's press conference just now, former KKK Grand Wizard David Duke is tweeting, thanking the President of the United States for this press conference that we just heard. You can see it there on your screen. Thank you, President Trump, for your honesty and courage to tell the truth about Charlottesville and condemn the leftist terrorists. I'm assuming BLM, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, the anti-establishment protesters is what they would call them. This is not going to go away for President Trump. If he thought he was trying to clear this up, this issue, to put this to bed, David, this is going to be something that dogs his campaign, his team, for a long time to come.
Cecilia, thank you. And as you point out, the former leader of the KKK sending out that tweet, and just to add a little more context, because he was on the scene, David Duke, in Charlottesville, and also tweeted after the initial response from President Trump over the weekend, retweeting one of the president's tweets, and in essence, and I'm paraphrasing here, saying, don't forget, Mr. President, that it was white America that put you in the White House. So you can see the tension, and David Duke appearing to be grateful for the words he heard from the president at Trump Tower today. I want to bring in our senior justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. And Pierre, you saw that I asked the Attorney General early this week, Jeff Sessions, on whether or not he believed this was domestic terror, whether there was a civil rights investigation. You heard the president there asked today, was this terror?
Well, he did not answer the question. He said it could be called murder. It could be called many different things. But I think the fascinating thing about today is this notion of the Confederacy. The president seemed to take sides with people who came to protest the taking down of the Robert E. Lee statue. And that is another hot-button issue, David, in this sense, that for the people who support Southern heritage, there's a belief that those statues have value. But for many people of color, particularly African Americans, those statues represent the Civil War, and in terms of people who believed in and fought for slavery. And so, therefore, the president has opened another can of worms in that regard. And the other thing that he didn't really focus on as much in those conversations, David, is the notion that the KKK and the neo-Nazis and the others who were there to support keeping that statue up were also people who are known to foment violence outright.
You know, Pierre, the president was then asked, does he believe those statues should come down? He said that's a question that local communities, that states should tackle, and said in some cases the federal government should look at that particular issue that you bring up. Our thanks to Pierre Thomas, Cecilia Vega, Mary Bruce. Our entire White House team will have complete coverage coming up on World News tonight. And for many of you, your local news continues on this ABC station. I'm David Muir in New York. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.